Hello guys, welcome back to another video. To start off December, we're going to be doing President Joe Biden versus former President Donald Trump, and probably one of the most likely scenarios that's going to be the matchup in 2024. I mean, the only other Republican candidate who really has like a chance at beating Trump is DeSantis. Don't really think any other Republican would have the greatest odds, but you never know. Maybe Trump drops out because of his health, because let's be honest here, he's very old. He could easily just do that. Or he could get prosecuted because there's a million investigations going around Trump. That could happen as well. There's a lot of ways it could be a different nominee in 2024. Okay, so let's start off with the safer states. Ones that I'll go over to either candidate over 10. Colorado is one of them. It's becoming a very progressive and more liberal state more and more nowadays, and we've seen it in the governor and senator races. Governor election ran a really far right Republican. She lost by about 19 to 20 points. And in the race with Joe Adea, the moderate Republican, he lost by about 12 or 13. So at these days, Colorado's a safe blue state, and it's trending that way. So it's pretty much as safe as you could get it. Iowa, it's heavily disapproves of Biden by a lot. I think it'll go to Trump by over 10%, probably like 11 points. I see it going to Trump towards, just because it's a very right wing trending state, and nearly every statewide office in Iowa is held by a Republican. So, yeah. Okay, I could start with the more likelier states. Alaska, I think it goes to Trump by only 8 points this time. It's sort of trending Democratic nowadays. Trump only won the state by 10 in 2020. Expect that margin to go down in 2024. While in Virginia, I think it just goes to a 9% Biden victory. I think some independent voters here, well, honestly, Trump is more unpopular than he was last time. So I kind of see Virginia kind of staying over 10%. I think Biden wins it by about 10.5, just with independents more so leaning towards Biden rather than Trump nowadays. And Trump's more unpopular than he was last time. So, yeah, I see Virginia's a solid blue state. While New Mexico, it's different. I think it goes to Biden by about 8 to 9 points, just because Latinos are sort of still somewhat trending a little tiny bit more Republican. Democrats still have good margins among Latinos, but I just see New Mexico, when Biden won it by 10, going down to 9 against Trump, just because of that Latino trend. The state of Texas, still think, well, honestly, no, I actually see it going as a lean state. I think Trump only wins it by 4.5 this time, just because Texas is somewhat trending Democratic every presidential election. I mean, in the 2022 midterms, we didn't really see that, but there was no real Trumpy candidate on the ballot there. It was more like a moderate Republican or someone who's less populist or less Trump-like in a way. Greg Abbott's kind of a boring Republican, so he easily won there. So, yeah, I see Trump only carrying the state by 4.5% because his favorability is decaying among independent voters. It just keeps getting worse and worse. Trump's getting weaker and weaker most of the time nowadays. It's going to be hard for him to win. Just straight up, it's going to be hard for him to beat Biden. All right. Ohio, the state is still very favorable towards Trump. Still think Trump would win it by about 7 or 8 points against Joe Biden, but the margin could decline here, but I still think it's a likely Trump state. Florida, I'm not putting it as safe for a couple of reasons. Reason one, Democratic turnout in the 2022 midterms was extremely low. In a presidential election, it would be much higher, but that doesn't mean to go back to a lean state. Still think it would be likely because a lot of Republicans are moving towards the state and a lot of Latinos in the state are trending towards Republicans. So I think Trump wins the state by about 8 or 9 points against Joe Biden. Almost a safe state, but for now I'm putting it as likely in the likely column just because Trump actually does well with independents in this state. And Republicans in general do well with independents in this state as well. All right. Next state. Let's go to New England. Maine and New Hampshire consider these likely states. I think New Hampshire is very out of reach towards Trump. He lost it by 8 points in 2020. And we saw his backed candidate, Don Baldock, also lost by like 9 points. And I just don't think New Hampshire likes Trump that much. He's behind in the Republican primary polls in the state of New Hampshire. It's a very socially liberal state. I don't think they're going to even bring it down to a lean margin for Trump. I just don't think this state will be competitive, nor should Trump focus on it. It only has 4 electoral votes, not that valuable as a target. While Maine's second, I see Trump doing slightly worse here because his base is slowly eroding among independent voters, and there's a lot of moderate independents in Maine's second district. All right. Next few states. Minnesota, I think Biden's margins with Minnesota hold up. He wins by 8 or 9 points against Donald Trump, just like last time. Michigan, I think the state's going to go further out of reach for Donald Trump. I've seen some people, some conservatives say that on Twitter mainly, they said that Trump winning Michigan back in 2016 was like Obama winning Indiana in 2008. It's an interesting comparison to see it that way, and it might sort of be right, but the margins are a lot different. Michigan's a lot more closer than Indiana. I mean, 2020, Biden only won the state by 2.5, but I expect his margin to prove to about 4% win in Michigan against Trump, mainly because Trump's toxicity among independents, it's getting really bad. His approval rating among independents nowadays are just declining rapidly. I mean, we saw that in the exit polls in Pennsylvania especially. Trump -18 there, Biden -8. And the midterms usually are favorable to the party out of power. So the electorate in Pennsylvania just dislikes Trump a lot. And we could say the same for Michigan, because Michigan's more Democratic than PA. And honestly, Pennsylvania, I think, is also out of reach for Trump. I think Biden wins the state by about 2% or even 2.5 against Donald Trump. Same reasoning. His populist appeal is still decent, but his independent appeal among more moderate voters in the state, it's going down the drain. It's becoming very hard for Trump to win because it keeps harping on the stolen election in 2020. He can't let it go that he lost fair and square, that it's going to really cause a negative decline with him among moderate or independent voters because they just don't like election deniers. And honestly, they didn't really disapprove of Biden that much as they disapprove of Trump. So that's another thing going in favor of Biden there. All right. Let's go to Arizona, Nevada. Arizona and Nevada, I both see these going into the Biden column, mainly because, again, independent voters are more so siding with Democrats rather than Trump-backed Republicans. So I just think just because Joe Biden's more moderate than Trump, he's just going to win those states just because of that. Voters kind of just don't care about Trump anymore, especially independent voters are trying to move away from him. So I just don't see how Trump could win either of these two states, especially Arizona, which is just shown it's really trending Democratic nowadays. And Nevada, maybe he could have a chance there. It could go to tilt if there was one state that could do it. It would be Nevada. But I still think Biden wins the state by 1.5% against Donald Trump. We're down to 3 more states. And that's the second district, which I think will go to Biden by about 4%. That's how much Biden won it last time in the new congressional lines. And we're down to Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Georgia. Georgia, it's just trending Democratic. That's just a fact. I just don't think Trump will be competitive in this state again. I think Biden would win it by 1.5%. He'll just win over those moderate independents, how Warnock won them over in the November election in Georgia. He beat Walker among independents pretty decently, and I think that'll happen again in Georgia with Trump. Just independent voters, again, are just dooming Trump in a lot of these swing states. Even in North Carolina, Trump's margin from 2020 is 1.5% wins, going to go down to tilt margin. Trump only wins the state by 0.8% just because of his rapid decline among independent voters and moderate voters in general. And the state of Wisconsin, this will be one of the closest Rust Belt states. I think Biden wins it by about 0.8% against Donald Trump. Definitely be closer, just because there's a lot of rural areas in Wisconsin that could come to Trump's benefit here. Because Wisconsin does not have a lot of urban areas like Michigan and Pennsylvania do. So, and Trump would still have some populist appeal here, but again, independents will definitely doom him here, especially moderate voters. So, that's my election prediction. It was Biden versus Trump. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments below.